All right, thank you so much for that presentation, Ken. So next up, I'd like to welcome to the stage Sean Wallis of W Partners and Greg Viverito of SeatGeek, and they'll be talking about SeatGeek Stadium front row seats to the making of a naming rights deal. So thank you.
Thank you. Hopefully you can hear me. This is really special and fun to be here. A lot of familiar faces, and I hope you guys all realize how special of an opportunity this is. When I was a student here, as was mentioned earlier, I think there was one pretty small sports marketing class where we had 4 or 5 speakers come through. But to have this whole program set up for you guys to learn over the course of the year and then interact with all these people that are here today, it's awesome. So take advantage of it. Don't be shy. Don't be scared to go up to someone and ask a question or introduce yourself, because no one would be here if they didn't want that to happen. So just kind of wanted to throw that out there. Pretty excited to talk about the future SeatGeek Stadium, which will be coming online up in Chicago next year. It's the home of Chicago Fire of the MLS. Naming rights and sponsorships, which I don't like that word. We'll talk about it in a second. But it's a huge part of the industry. And so hopefully this will kind of allow some people to look behind the curtain at how these deals come together, the time they take, and just kind of the whole process. So before we get going, a little bit background. Excuse me. Sean Wallis. I'm at W Partners up in Chicago. I did come here down to WashU, played basketball here, was part of the Olin Business School, finance and accounting major, master's in finance program. I'll just tell you a little bit about my journey. So we, after graduating, didn't necessarily want to work in investment banking, got a job in strategy consulting in Chicago, great entry-level position, really worked with smart people and learned a lot. But after a couple of years, just kind of felt like something was missing. Wanted to get back into sports any way I could, give it a shot, see kind of how it could work out. Networked with as many people as possible, and I think one thing I learned, which you'll see, is there are a lot of ways to work in sports outside of being the GM of a team or being an agent or being a coach. And so I think I found a really nice fit moving to a company called the Marketing Arm in Chicago, where we actually handled all of AT&T's partnerships and helped them develop their strategy. And that's kind of where I learned the business. From Chicago, love the Cubs, which may not be as popular here, and some deep dish pizza. But I want to introduce Greg, and he'll take it and give you a little background on him.
So I'm Greg. I'm from a ticketing technology company called SeatGeek. I'm mostly here to try and capitalize on the halo effect of Sean. My only claim to fame is that I play in the same Thanksgiving morning football game we used to play with Dr. Rish here. So no back-to-back national championships, but I think we did win a game before we forced you into retirement. I went to Vanderbilt. I went and I got an MBA at Stanford. I spent some time at the NFL Players Association. I do not love Emo's Pizza. Sean made this slide, but I am excited to tell you about the business we're building at SeatGeek.
Awesome. So we're going to give you a little bit of background on both of our businesses and then kind of talk about the process of the deal. So W Partners is a joint venture with the Ricketts family that owns the Cubs. It was created about 5.5 years ago. Our founder was the Cubs, the Ricketts' first hire when they bought the team, and our business was launched kind of as a separate entity to help the Ricketts family capitalize on the restoration of Wrigley Field and development around Wrigley Field. So why W Partners? It's about creating winning partnerships. And I think the one thing you hear about whether it's naming rights or other partnerships is, they're called sponsorships. And I think the term being a sponsor of something else means it's really kind of a one-sided relationship. And I think what we're here to kind of help paint the picture of is that these truly are partnerships. So while yes, there may be financial contributions more from one side than the other or not, there's truly integrated business, integrated marketing that both sides are truly gaining value from. And so I think that's the story behind W Partners. And Our business, as I mentioned, for 2 to 3 years, we exclusively work for the Ricketts family. We helped them generate over $500 million in partnership revenue. So if anyone's been up to Wrigley in the last handful of years, you know how much it's changed from a front of house, back of house perspective, but then also an incredible outside development that truly is becoming a destination. We then, after kind of wrapping up our work with them, branched out to represent other properties across sports, entertainment, culinary, what we call arts. So just a few quick highlights. This is from when the Cubs won the World Series, but you can see the coolest part here, I think, is the Toyota logo under the marquee, which just got added a couple years ago, but all the people on social media, taking pictures of that. We worked with Chance the Rapper on his music festival that was up in Chicago. This is from the James Beard Awards, which is the Oscars of the culinary world, so we represent them. And we also have done naming rights of the CIBC Theater, which is where Hamilton has had about 3-year run in Chicago. So those are the type of partners that we work with. The one that brought us together is our work with the Village of Bridgeview. So about 12 years ago, the Village of Bridgeview built a 20,000-seat soccer and concert venue. It is right next to Midway Airport, just a handful of miles from downtown Chicago. The unique thing about where we come in is, the Village of Bridgeview is run by a mayor. They have constituents and residents. And so when they own an incredible and amazing asset like this, where the Chicago Fire will be playing for the next 18 years, and they had an original deal with Toyota for it to be Toyota Park, and that deal expires, the mayor is not an expert in sports partnerships. And so where a third party like us comes in is we kind of knew this deal was coming up, facilitate a relationship, and we come up with a viable solution to help them generate revenue, help maintain the incredible stadium that they have, and hopefully be an expert that they can lean on to help them identify and find another partner. So this is where we came in. These things take a very long time, and honestly, if you look at this timeline from January when we came into the process through July, this was before we even had talked to or met anyone from SeatGeek. So very long process, going from securing the stadium as a client to helping them build a compelling story to bring to the marketplace, right? It's not just about naming a soccer stadium, like why is that important? So what type of state is the MLS in? What's the vision for future programming and development around the stadium? And how's the performance of the team and hopefully going to get better, right? So building this story, working with them to build a partner list. Who are we going to go to try and have conversations? And I think our list really came from being Chicago-centric and then also soccer-centric. And one of the reasons SeatGeek was included is, as Greg will say, they're a big partner of the MLS. So that was one of the reasons that they kind of initially were targeted. And you can see after that, we reached out to them, and from July through April, that's a long time, right? From the initial outreach to having a lot of conversations with a lot of stakeholders. And the reason it's such a long process, which Greg will tell you about their kind of evaluation of the opportunity, is there's a lot of stakeholders involved. It's a long deal. And it's an investment not only from a financial perspective, but from a technology and ticketing perspective from the Village's point of view. So it's a very strategic, integrated partnership, but just kind of wanted to take you through that these things take a very, very long time to come together. And even though it was announced in April, a handful of months ago, the stadium, as soon as the Fire season's over this year, will then switch to SeatGeek Stadium. So take it over.
Thank you, Sean. So how many of you guys know what SeatGeek is or has heard of SeatGeek? Oh, actually pretty good. Not just from the program, like you knew it before. So we're a relatively young company. This is definitely the first naming rights deal that we've ever done. I'll talk to you a little bit about our calculus for doing the deal, but I wanted to just start with a little bit of context on who we are, what we're trying to do in ticketing, and why a deal like this is something we'd even consider. So started by two recent college grads in 2009, Russ and Jack. truly in a coffee shop in Boston. They were trying to buy, I believe it was Celtics tickets, and they did a Google search. They said, this is way too difficult. We don't know where to go to get the best price, where to go to get an authentic ticket. We're inspired by what Kayak had done in the travel industry, really making it easy to sort of comparison shop across many different sites, and said that should exist for ticketing. So started as an aggregator of secondary markets. So the biggest affiliate for StubHub, Ticketmaster, Vivid Seats, sending traffic to them. Launched a mobile app in 2013, which was really the inflection point of the company. Allowed us to raise about $100 million in venture funding, at which point we lost the business relationship with StubHub and Ticketmaster because we became a threat to their businesses. So we've built our own secondary marketplace. And then in 2016, which really sets the stage for this deal, we created a primary ticketing business. So in addition to competing with StubHubs of the world, Vivid Seats of the world, we're now going in and we're competing directly with Ticketmaster for primary ticketing deals with venues and teams. We launched that business in 2016 with Sporting Kansas City, and in the 2 years since then, we've signed 9 partnerships, including the one with the Village and the Fire, as well as the Dallas Cowboys and the New Orleans Saints and Pelicans. Our view on the industry is that it's way too hard to buy a ticket, that going to an event is this sort of uniquely magical shared experience that everyone loves to do. No one loves to buy a ticket. It's hard, it's confusing. We want to be an additive element to the process rather than a point of friction, which I think also is going to allow us to do some really, really interesting things with the marketing assets that we're going to get from the Village and from W Partners. From a marketing standpoint, I mentioned before, this is a big deal for SeatGeek. We haven't done a deal like this. This is our marketing spend for the last 5 years and forecast into next year. Notice that we didn't spend any money on marketing from 2009 to 2013. So all organic growth. The DNA of the company is really one of efficiency and direct response. So you'll see these early channels, right? That's stuff you've seen, promo codes, easily tracked. We're looking to make our money back on every dollar we spend from a marketing standpoint, but we're also willing to experiment. So we look at a deal like this sort of in 2 lenses. One, does it allow us to continue to build the primary ticketing business? We don't want to go and slap our name on a building and grow our brand if we're not able to provide a really cool tech experience that goes along with it. So having the primary business and going in and being able to do a deal that's interesting. All these deals, you've got a bunch of input. So you're putting some sponsorship money up front. You're collecting fees in the back end. It's sort of this exercise of moving money around a little bit. We felt like this one was a really interesting chance to do something that we had never done, right? So we've done all these channels year after year. We'll test anything, and if it works, we'll keep spending money on it. So to be quite honest with you, this is an expensive experiment for us. If you see us do a bunch of more naming rights deals in the next several years, you'll know that it worked, that we hit our goals, and if you don't, we'll know that it won't. We obviously are excited about the chance to do this. We feel like the team in Chicago has built a pretty compelling plan around attracting not just soccer and the content that they've historically had, but other third-party events, because that's a big aspect of these deals as well, and allows us to play in a marketing sandbox that we've never done before.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that Greg's bringing up is SeatGeek is such a forward-thinking, technology-driven company, and for a municipality to have a new partner like this is pretty special. If they were going to do probably something like this on their own, they might have ended up with a local bank that they
Sure.
could probably move some business over to. But to be able to kind of build this fully integrated partnership, was a big deal, right? So you got ESPN, you got Darren Rovell. It was on every major news outlet in Chicago when the deal gets announced. Sports Business obviously did a huge feature, and so I think what we've seen is not only excitement from the Village of Bridgeview's perspective, but also from their tenants, right? So the Chicago Fire are a tenant of what will be SeatGeek Stadium. Chicago Red Stars are the women's professional soccer league team. And now we're also having these conversations with other leagues that are developing, looking to place teams in different markets, because there's a true commitment to build out the technology platform for the Village. So it's in addition to that, programming with music. I think there's a great vision for partnership that we're really excited to see come to life. I think a couple more important things to kind of point out is in that terms of timeline, right? There's a lot of stuff leading up to the deal getting signed, a lot of work with lawyers and business points and deal terms that take months and months to kind of hammer out and make everyone feel comfortable. But then, that's kind of like the starting point, even though it's the finished point of the contract. Now is the really fun part where we're talking about, well, where's the brand going to go? What is it going to look like? How is the ticketing platform going to impact Fire fans? And what's the transformation going to be like for anyone going to visit the stadium? So I think while there's all these things before that come into play, it's very fun to see kind of the fruits of the labor and more of the fan-facing things coming into the conversation now.
So with that, we'll take a few questions if we have some time. One question? Wow. One question. Make it a good one.
Guess we answered everything.
Question from the back. Question. On the secondary market, how do you distinguish between legitimate and non-legitimate tickets?
So, good question. The experience that you get on a page for, say, the Chicago Fire is going to be blended. So you'll see primary and secondary. Our view is that at this point, a fan doesn't really care whether it's primary or secondary, at least they shouldn't, so long as that barcode is unique to them. So the underlying technology is such that when you buy a ticket on SeatGeek, we are reissuing the barcode, meaning that the barcode that somebody posted for sale gets invalidated, and the barcode that you receive is unique to you, regardless of whether it's a primary or a secondary ticket. Does that answer the question? And then one other notable point is that the sort of old model is that there's one sort of official place to go buy tickets, and then there's all these other marketplaces where someone can go and post a ticket, and 99.5% of the time, you get in if you buy it on SeatGeek or if you buy it on StubHub. But there are cases where somebody sells a ticket on two marketplaces, and you end up getting denied at the gate. We're taking a very, very different view of that with this deal, and we're saying we want to work with all these other marketplaces. We want to have, to Sean's point of being tech forward, we want to have a technical integration with the StubHubs of the world and the Vivid Seats of the world, so that when you're buying a ticket on those sites, those can also be authorized. So we're taking this concept of authorized and extending it to other marketplaces beyond just our own marketplace for the sake of fan experience.
One last one right back here.
How do you plan on leveraging the sponsorship, and what are your benchmarks for measuring success?
Yeah, so probably the most obvious one for us, there'll be two really obvious ones, is market share in Chicago. So not just on these events. Obviously, we expect to see a greater share of secondary market and primary market sales, but also what those buyers do, those season ticket holders. Do they go, or single game buyers, do they go and do they buy Cubs tickets? Do they buy White Sox tickets? What else do they do on SeatGeek? What's the lifetime value of that customer, and how does it compare to the lifetime value of a customer that we might acquire on, say, Facebook or some other marketing channel, right? How valuable is this marketing channel of team buyers? And then brand awareness is the other one. I was actually impressed how many people in the room knew SeatGeek, but we're still a relatively unknown national brand because we haven't done a lot of brand marketing. And so we'll look at just brand awareness surveys in market that we do through a third party before and after. So those are the two big ones.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.